Hello and thanks for joining me today. We're going to be looking at composition for beginners. Now it's something that is not as complicated as it sounds. Some people get a little bit worried about it, but actually the word composition is much more straightforward than you think. So we're just basically talking about how a picture is composed, how it's put together. And so the main thing that I want to get across to you really as beginners is that you need to be organised. Before you start your painting, whatever subject you've chosen to do, something that's inspired you, that you want to paint, that you want to make a picture from, organise it. Think about where different things are going in your painting. Think about the size of your canvas, the shape of your canvas, and where you're going to be putting those elements. So have a rough piece of paper and make a plan. So it's about planning, and it's like about anything else in life really. You need to plan to have a good outcome. So don't just go rushing straight in with your painting. Think about it, stop and spend a little bit of time on your composition. So really, I mean, it's about balance, it's about balancing your painting, it's about having a focal point, and it's about moving the viewer's eye around the painting and keeping the viewer interested in the painting. So there are a few rules that we can use to achieve a good composition, and a very basic one for beginners is to think about the rule of thirds. So you have your canvas or your piece of paper, and you think about splitting that into thirds in each direction. Well, if you were using a pencil, you could just, do your lines straight across with a pencil and then rub them out later. And then you've got focal points. So, and with something like a landscape, you might think, well, I'll have the horizon there and then have 2/3 sky and 1/3 land. Or whatever else you're drawing, you might think I'll create a focal point here, I might have another bit of a focal point there, and I'll lead the eye from there to there using some lines. So just very, very simply think about where these points lie on your piece of paper or your canvas, and think about making a focal point there and a line here or here. Okay, so we'll just have a quick look at some that I picked out earlier to sort of illustrate some of these points. So the first one here is John Constable's Stonehenge, and if you can have a look at that, the mountains come to about here somewhere. So actually you've got about 2/3 sky and 1/3 land there. Now if we look very carefully, about a third of the way across, this is a very nice focal point here, and if we look at the lines in the sky, that's bringing the eye down to the area here where we've got the people and the lighter stones and the sun shining on there. And then we've got this line of this stone here taking your eye down here again, but then of course it's brought back in with this line of mountains and by the sky. So the viewer's eye has been drawn around into this area, and again with this line down here, it comes down to the stones here, which then point us back in this direction. So quite a straightforward composition there. Now if we look at Turner's Fighting Tamarin, unfortunately the picture here is a close-up, so that doesn't give you the whole composition. But if you look at the little one here, again you can see you've got about 2/3 sky and 1/3 sea. And you've got the boats themselves, particularly the little tug, in a third across and a third up. And then you've got the sky, some of the clouds sort of pointing towards those little boats, and you've got the line of the mast in that area as well, and then the line of the sea going across there. Okay, so that's quite a straightforward one. Now if we look at Van Gogh and we look at Starry Night, what I was talking about before about leading the eye around the painting, look how he's got the cobbles, the lines of the cobbles going up towards the people there. And then we've got this line of the roof and the line of the tree coming down, so that we're again looking at the people. But then we've got these verticals of the buildings going up to the sky. So the eye is going around the painting all the time, up to the sky and back down to these people. And again in here to them. And then the line of the roof and everything also giving us that perspective. Now if we look at one of my favourites, Toulouse-Lautrec, I particularly like this painting, it's one of my favourites. He uses the floorboards here. So when we talk about lines, and you'll hear people speak about directional lines, I might have said it when I've been doing some of my tutorials. It's lines that draw the eye, and these could be imaginary lines, that perhaps aren't there in your original material, or whatever you're painting that is in front of you. Just imagine that maybe this dance floor, the floorboards were going in this direction. I don't know, but maybe they were going in this direction, and he thought, actually I want them to go in that direction to draw the eye to this lady that's dancing. So think about that, moving paths, moving lines, putting a line of grass or something in to move the eye to where you want it to be. And again, we have a similar thing with Degas in this picture, if I can get to the page, with the floorboards again, using the lines of the floorboards to move the eye. So these floorboards here are connecting the girls over here to the girls here, and again this vertical of the door comes down to this central figure of this girl, focal point, who is concentrating on what a teacher's saying, but these lines connect all the people together, those girls, the teacher and the girl here. Okay, so I'll just so like I say, it's about organising yourself. So whatever you're drawing, it doesn't matter what your subject is, just think about how you're going to organise your picture. Now, I would always set off, I'm not going to do a picture, I'm just going to show you how you should begin really. In a sketchbook or a scrap piece of paper, think about the size of your canvas and have a margin as well. Having a margin is always a good idea, because for two reasons. One is it's much easier to have it framed afterwards, it makes your framer's job easier. Sorry, I've got a mucky hand, I've messed that up, I think I've got ink on my hand. It makes your framer's job easier, and it makes it easier to mount it if you've got that extra bit of paper there and you're not working right up to the edge of your paper. Also, when you're working with your paint and your colours, you can test your colours in your margin. So it's always a good idea to have a margin. So then you would, with pencil, I'm doing this with pencil you can see, but do this with pencil, split it into thirds, so then you can rub out your pencil lines later. I shouldn't have gone all the way across because that's making it look as if we're using that bit. We'll just go to the margin. And of course, like I say, you'll be able to rub these out later because you'll be doing this in pencil. So in pencil, have your paper, so this is the edge of your painting. Have your painting into these 9 boxes. So then you've got these focal points. Now let's say we were doing a landscape. We'll do either 2/3 sky and 1/3 land, or 2/3 land and 1/3 sky. So in this case, we'll perhaps do some distant hills and we'll put them here on this line. And maybe this is where the sun's coming over, where the focal point is. So we'll dip down there, because later on you might have a light area there where your sun is. And then perhaps we'll lead the eye down here. And then if you think about it with your land, you might want to, if that's going out there, you might want to bring the eye back in. So that could be a path, it could be a bit of grass, whatever, but think about where some of these lines are going, and again you might want to bring your eye back in here. So you've got 1/3 sky and 2/3 land mass. So then you might think, well, when you put your clouds in, when you're painting clouds, you can often use them for directional lines because nobody knows the direction of the clouds that day when you were painting them. Just put them wherever you want them. So again, you might want to bring them down to that third. Your clouds might be rolling down in this direction. And then perhaps you want to put a pathway in. And so you take maybe your pathway or your road up to this point here. And then maybe some focal point here, maybe a little house in the distance that's got the light shining on it from here, so you could make a thing of having your light coming down onto the roof there and that would create a nice little focal point in that area. And then maybe you'd have a tree, some trees going across on that line, so everything's fitting onto that line there. So we've got the 3 parts to the painting. Okay, so I hope that was not too complicated. It's looks a bit of a mess now with all my pen lines, but obviously you would be doing that in pencil and rubbing these guidelines out. It's just to show you where you would put some focal points and use some directional lines. So again, the line of the mountain might want to like bring your eye down to that little house. You might put another mountain or a stream or something there, again coming down to that little house. So just think about where you're pointing all these lines. So when we talk about directional lines, that it could be the line of some trees, it could be the line of a mountain, it could be the line of a fence. So use them and move them. So if you've got a fence in the distance, you know, you might not just be where you want it, change it, move it to line up with what you want it to. Again, you could put a fence going back towards this little house along here. Okay, so I hope that was useful to you, and like I said, not too complicated, but just really think about planning. You could, you know, and do several, don't just do one, do several. Think about where you're going to put things and try different ideas. You might decide that actually you want a square canvas or a square piece of paper to do your picture in. So just try a few different things. And one tip about composition as well as using your lines and as well as using these rule of thirds, don't put too much focus, too much detail on the outside edges of your painting. For one, they could get covered up with your framing if you're not careful, but for another, it draws the eye out. You know, you can imagine here, if you're wanting this to be a focal point with a lot of light on that little house, and then you go and put something very complicated here, a person, whatever, something very, very detailed over here, your eye is being drawn out of that painting then. You want not much detail at all at the edges of the painting. Let the colours blend off, let them be quite loose at the edges of the painting, and keep your detail for the centre. If you've any questions about composition, if you'd like to pop them in the comments below, I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. I will put a little fact sheet on composition on my website, and I'll put the link to that in the description below. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.